Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Cricket Podcast. It has been a while. I feel like it's a pattern saying that, Azza, but how are you doing this fine morning/afternoon, depending on time zones?
Well, depending on time zones, I'm doing well, Nick. It's been a while. We need to get used to the habit of podcasting regularly again. I remember when we were recording regularly, enjoying the entire experience. And there's been some cricket that's been played since we were last on air, so to speak.
I mean, it's a good thing the Ashes is a five-test series, otherwise it would already be done in terms of being over and how quickly it's gone past as far as a contest has gone.
I
So we
mean,
have
there
a
were
bit.
jokes that the England team were wishing that they would have got Omicron so they could go home.
I don't even think that's a joke, to be honest. It would have
Yeah.
saved a lot of people a lot of embarrassment. It's standards have fallen if you're celebrating test draws, but there you have it. Um, yeah, no, as I think it's been a couple of weeks that we've had
Yeah.
a decent episode out or had any episode out, and I think we want to trial out a new format.
Yeah.
Try to be a bit more structured, and hopefully the three viewers become six, and things keep going from there. But this isn't to
Yeah.
plug. This isn't to plug anything. What are your thoughts and feelings on Ross Taylor? Let's jump right into
Right in.
some of the big news from
Do you
this
wanna
week.
Do you wanna? I want to first just get the listeners acquainted to the new format of the podcast. What
They'll
we're trying
figure it
out
out. They're
is
not as dumb as you are. They understand. They'll
they're.
figure it out.
I hope they're not as dumb as I am, but just to help them figure it out, help them along the way. We're gonna first start with a little bit of our roundup of the news in the world of cricket, and we have some very interesting names, very
No,
creative
you're not
names
doing
to some
this.
of the
You're
sections.
not. You're not doing this.
And to begin with, we're going to discuss news with a quick single, Nick. And the quick single is that Ross Taylor has decided to call it a day on his illustrious career.
Can I retire hurt?
With Sorry,
Can
can
I
you retire her?
give it? If you're going down with these fucking names. Anyways, yes, the quick
We
single
have
is
to give these a chance.
the
It's a quick
the
single.
quick single is that Ross Taylor is retired. Yeah. Um,
After an illustrious career, I mean, do you remember when he had the absolutely crazy run of form in the sort of vein of Mohammad Yusuf? He did, I think, from 2015 through 2018.
that was the period where
Uh,
basically every shot was a slog sweep for six.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, he's by far the highest run getter in New Zealand cricket history. 37 years old. 112 test matches, that's not a joke, at an average of 44.7.
Yeah.
233 ODIs and 102 T20s. Uh, incredible, incredible career. He averages 40 plus in both tests and ODIs.
Has he
It's
retired
it's
just for
just
New Zealand, or has he retired from cricket completely?
Oh, that I'm not sure about.
Because might see him in the IPL. I'm not sure he's
My team in that, yeah.
decent, or I mean any of the other leagues, but seems like a decent pickup if he's put
Yeah,
his hand up for it. We didn't discuss this before
of
before we
course,
started recording, but the
of
other
course.
retirement, maybe not the opposite end of the spectrum, but still not probably in the prime of his career, arguably, is Quinton de Kock from the Test arena.
Yeah.
What are your views and thoughts on that?
Well, the biggest disappointment is that if Quinton de Kock had gone on to become one of the greatest South African wicketkeeper batsmen, and South Africa and West Indies would have had a legendary rivalry in this modern era, then we would have seen probably 20 years down the line something called a de Kock Holder Trophy. And
I mean,
unfortunately, we'll never see that.
it's
Um,
it's a shame. Everybody wanted to see de Kock Holder. It would have been a
yeah,
legendary series.
yeah, yeah.
Thankfully, there are other websites for that kind of content. Um, Oh yeah,
We're
bathroom.
not in the business of recommending those sorts of
No,
things, but
not at all. But it was an interesting one. Yeah, you know, you could say
yeah,
he's dropped the ball was on his Test career, but
yeah,
he's 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 given the reason that he's got a young family or he's just had his first child, a daughter, and that's the rationale for
yeah,
not playing Test cricket anymore. So fair play. He's still going to be part of the one day arena and limited overs arena. So he will be around, and he's had an eventful couple of months to say the least.
it's
Um,
true. True, he has. Yeah,
so
maybe he's just tired of it all,
yeah,
tired of all the media attention.
I think
Um,
that might play a part. That might play a part.
but on the back of his retirement, South Africa won two Test matches on the trot against India. So it did look dire for South Africa at the end of that first Test match. It looked like it might be a clean sweep of a series. And with de Kock retiring, it looked even worse. But they turned it around and they did really well.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's. I mean, let's go into that section.
Yeah,
Let's jump
yeah,
into the review preview of the cricket sort of that's happened so
yeah,
far.
yeah. Which
With
we've so eloquently decided to name the
which
DRS
you have so
section.
eloquently decided to name the DRS section.
I clearly remember it as a joint decision.
Uh, sure. Um, I wanted to say that just as a little caveat for anybody
Hmm.
listening, I think we've decided that we're not going to bother following all kinds of cricket. We're just gonna follow the cricket we wanted to follow and have had time to digest. So honestly,
Yeah,
like most Australians, I don't give a damn about the Big Bash. Waste of time, waste of space. Bring on the IPL whenever that comes up. You know, if maybe
yeah,
Cricket Australia can learn from the ECB and give us something as legendary as the 100, that remains to be seen. But
yeah.
let's start off
Uh,
with Australia. England was going to say let's not start off with that. Let's start off with the South Africa India series that has just concluded. Centurion
yes.
was bucked a trend in many ways. It was South Africa's. I don't know if it was their first ever, but they certainly don't lose at Centurion. It was India's
Hmm.
first win at that venue, but more importantly, it was the first time India kicked off a tour in a long time with a win. Usually, India lose
With
the
a win.
first. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. And India played really well. Everything seemed to come together in that first Test match. Um, I think it didn't look good for India. It didn't look good for South Africa. Sorry. After that, during that first innings, even with batting collapses, something looked off with the rhythm of their fast bowlers. The Kagiso Rabada's rhythm seemed to plague him throughout the series. Lungi Ngidi was probably the only person that stood out in that first test.
yeah.
Marco Janssen found some rhythm, but that was about it. Anrek Nokia getting injured and ruled out at the beginning of the series. Not great omen for them. So yeah, as we've already said, that first match, it looked like South Africa were just sort of going to whimper their way home to the third Test match somehow. Um, we did see some moments of brilliance in that first Test match from Keegan Peterson. I really like the way he bats. I think he's a very attractive looking Test match batsman.
Yep.
Um, I think there's a place for him in the white ball side as well. So really happy to see him. He was also the highest top run scorer of the series. Dean Elgar against India is always going to be very. He puts up a brave front. So at the end, I think they redeemed themselves quite well after Centurion.
Yeah. Well,
On the other hand,
I
sorry,
think there were a lot of question marks over the batting for South Africa. The
yeah,
bowling less so, but it's indicative of the sort of lack of quality, so to speak, at least from the outside, was demonstrated by the fact that when India got the Peterson wicket on the last day, on the fourth day of the Cape Town Test, even though South Africa I think needed only 60 odd runs there was a buzz as if there really still was a chance to win the game. You're one more wicket away from everything falling apart.
Yeah, that's true. And that's look. There's no way past it. This South African team, they're in a rebuilding phase. They're still looking for their sort of star players. They've got a few bankable guys in the name of sort of Dean Elgar, probably Aidan Markram as well, in the top order. But they're still looking for some proper anchor players like they used to have. Faf, Hashim, Jacques, AB. That was a batting order that you'd be scared of bowling to.
Yeah, I mean that was quite a batting order. And you're right. I don't think they've produced. There doesn't seem to be anybody who really, with the exception maybe now of Keegan Peterson, none of the other players in the squad really seem to be able to match up to any of those greats that South Africa used to having.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're a team very much on the rebuild at the moment, and that's probably why we saw that fragility in their batting lineup, even when they had 60 odd runs to get, or even yesterday on the 14th of Jan when they were chasing down about 100 runs in the final day. There was a buzz around the Indian team, and the second thing to say about that is that this Indian team has come to tour really well. They've come to become a very good fielding side.
I think a lot of that's come down to their clapping technique. That's proven to be a tool in their arsenal.
Yeah, their clapping technique, their speaking to the DRS mic technique.
Yeah, I think those are all those certainly aren't something that my therapist would call signs of insanity or being unhinged. I think it's a fairly normal behavior.
Certainly not. Yeah. Saying that an entire country is against you because one review went wrong.
Proportionate response.
Proportional response.
I think.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that, by the way? I mean, obviously, an absurd assertion, an absurd comment, and there was after the game yesterday. There was an interesting. I think I was watching it out the corner of my eye. Virat was in a post match conference, and he seemed to allude to the fact that if India had gone on to take a couple of wickets and been fired up afterwards, then it would have been worth it. As if to say that what they were saying was just to rile themselves up. I don't quite understand what they were trying to achieve.
I think it was a very heat of the moment thing. It doesn't reflect well for KL Rahul or Virat Kohli, both of whom are senior leaders in that team.
Or Ashwin, but then it's expected. I think Ashwin's liked only by maybe his own parents and you. I don't think many other people in world cricket particularly.
I know of several people in Tamil Nadu who are big Ravi Ashwin fans.
Fair enough.
And I think he's a great test bowler. He does have a tendency to speak more than he's required to.
He's a massive foot and mouth guy. He really just and he has questionable. He's and as a lawyer, I suppose I should be able to appreciate sort of the finality.
But Nick, he's really big on the YouTube space. He's got a good podcast. So Ashwin.
Yeah. Sorry for slagging you off. Can you promote a YouTube channel with 20 odd subscribers? That'd be great.
Subscribe here.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe. No, I was just going to say that I know we've digressed a bit. Right? My issue with Ashwin is it's not just Ashwin; it's anybody of that ilk in cricket. Is that there are a lot of things that are technically within the rules which people don't do because it's not etiquette, right? And I'm not a fan of this idea of, well, it's technically within the rules, so it's okay to do it, right? I think there's certain areas. I know I'm referring to man-kunding and stuff like that, but I think at the end of the day, there's a certain way to behave. There's a certain way to act.
We can have a separate episode on
man-kunding. We will. I think we need to have a separate because
we should.
Because I think I'm going to go as far as to potentially lose all of the Indian viewership that we don't have by saying it's okay in India, but it's not okay anywhere else.
It's firstly it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
So you need to understand that in India it's okay.
Yeah.
I've played gully cricket where I've been monk-hunted. I've monk-hunted people. It's completely okay in India. It happens all the time. But you speak to Aussies, you speak to people who've played village cricket in England. It's just you don't do it.
It's just not
So
cricket.
for as being an Indian cricket fan, I don't have any problems with it, but I do respect that some other people might. Honestly, it's for the ICC to change the rule because if there's a rule where a batsman can get out if they're outside the crease, which they are being unfair because they're going to steal a run more than they probably could have, then it is illegal, right? So let's change the rule. How do you penalize a batsman for such a thing? Maybe you take a run off.
Does that mean that batsmen shouldn't be allowed to run on buys? We need
No,
to we
that's not what
well
that
I
means.
mean I have a I mean I'm gonna go down a different argument there, but I think we need to nip this in the bud and stop this and save this for a different episode. Let us know in the comments if you'd like to hear a sort of debate discussion on the Mankan rules. Uh, but we've sidetracked.
Yeah,
We wanted to talk about the India South Africa series. As you
yeah,
said, things looked really bleak for South Africa after Centurion, and then they turned it around really well.
yeah.
KG in
They
particular.
found KG found form. Marco Janssen was a good find. The Indian batsmen, the entire top order, and then the middle orders as well, apart from Rishabh Pant, are all right-handed batsmen. And we know how much right-handed batsmen and then the Indian batsmen in particular struggle against left-arm pacers. So it's no surprise there that Marco Janssen did well. Not to take anything away from him, he's a terrific bowler. He picked up 19 wickets in the series. Kagiso KG picked up 20, and the third highest was Lungi at 15, which just goes to show that the Indians just weren't picking up as many wickets as the South Africans.
Yeah.
And neither were they scoring as many runs. So the top two highest scorers were KP, Keegan Peterson, and Dean Elgar, and the third highest was KL Rahul at
So
226.
the shocking news is India scored less than South Africa, and that's why they lost.
That's why they lost. And they took lesser wickets.
And they
Who
took
knew
fewer
that you need to
wickets.
take more wickets
Yeah.
to win a test match
Yeah. Let's
or
win
a
a
test
test
series?
series even. I
Yeah.
think we've spoken about Peterson. We've spoken about Rabada, Marco Janssen. Has these are all players that to watch out for in terms of a
Yeah.
fantasy discussion as well. Um, we're gonna in sort of section 3. I know you've got some interesting stuff you want to address regarding away batting performances. So just before we get there,
Yeah.
let's talk about arguably the best England side ever to tour Australia. Um, they are
The 2010?
currently. Oh no, I'm talking about now, obviously.
Oh,
Um,
of course.
it's it is chalk and cheese between that 2010 side and the side that's gone to Australia this time.
Mm.
It's been humiliating. It's been disappointing, and towards the end of it, honestly, you become quite numb to it. I said at the top
Yeah.
of the show that celebrating a draw shouldn't be the marker, but boy, I can tell you, I clapped when that happened.
Mm.
Uh, it's been tough to watch. England's are attempting to mount another fight back rescue job as we speak at the close of play. Australia are 37 for 3, lead by 152 runs. It's same old, and you have to give
Yeah.
the commentators a lot of credit for trying to make it seem like there's ever been a series.
Yeah, there's plenty of talk before the series started about 5-0, 4-0, 3-1, whatever, but there was never an expectation for England to crumble as badly as they
Yeah.
have in the series.
Yeah.
I was mentioning to you off air that I'm pretty numb to this now. I'm frankly, quite bored of the series. It's no fun. It's not like last year when India toured Australia. Um, we were at the edge of our seat with every ball that was bowled after the first test. Um, England just don't have
I will
the
say,
batsmen to.
the fourth test was interesting. I found the fourth test really
Yeah,
good
the
to
fourth
watch.
test was certainly
Um,
interesting. Yes.
but you're right. I mean, ultimately, you don't want to watch one team show up against a team that doesn't show up. That's not fun to watch. It's not interesting.
Yeah.
It gets very samey. And the problem is, I think English cricket's got a big issue. I mean, that's stating the obvious, but there's a complete inability to press home any sort of advantages or drop catches. You could have had Australia, they could have been 12 for 4 with Labuschagne out in the first innings. They go on to make 303. England in that situation get bowled out for 60 odd in
Yeah.
on the Boxing Day test. Um,
Yeah.
England in that situation limp to 188 in this test. It's not good enough. Um, they've got a there's a long rebuild um, to go. But is there any performance in particular that stood out for you from an Australia point of view? There are so many to point out.
Well, there's so many. The highest scorer in the series, who plenty of pundits and analysts were doubting his merit, was Travis Head.
Yeah.
He's been the highest scorer for the series. The previous test match, the fourth test match, Usman Khawaja was his 200s in the series, and the same match was absolutely amazing. I think he's sort of solidified his place in the team
Yeah.
for this coming season when Australia tours Asia. Um, we always knew Usman is a good batsman. For him, it's just been a very roller coaster ride of a career. So it's good to see him do well. Marnus Labuschagne, do we want to get into that dismissal from the final Test match?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think he's not. He recognized the need to be aggressive in the moment, and I think in trying to take the attack to England, he started being. Whilst he's an unorthodox batsman, he played in a manner that is unorthodox to him, and was
Yeah,
really trying to push the aggression. And I think he just tried to be doing. He just tried to do a bit too much and lost balance
yeah.
a bit and just moved really too far across. On the on the on Travis Head and Labuschagne and Usman Khawaja, I want to ask you a question. Sam Perry from the Great Cricketer podcast, Pezzy
Yep.
Lad as he's known on the podcast, he actually wrote a piece in the Guardian. I think this
Hmm.
was a couple of weeks ago, um, which is really interesting. Which talks about how, from his point of view, and I don't actually disagree with him. I think there's a lot of merit in what he's saying. Is that we keep on talking about how this is a bad England side, but does that mean you can't call this a good Australian side?
Um,
And I want to know your thoughts on that. Is Travis Head looking good because Travis Head's a good player? Were we right, or were
yeah.
we wrong to doubt him? Has he proved his doubters wrong, or do we want to just say, well, you know what, England have been so abysmal, um, they would have made their own team look good.
Look, there's no doubt that this is a good Australian team. This is a good Australian team. There's no doubt about that. The trouble with deciding whether an Australian team is good is that in our very recent past, we've seen one of the greatest cricket teams of all time, and we're always going to be comparing these Aussies to those Aussies, and that's really the problem for the Aussies, that nothing that they do can ever match what the teams of Ricky Ponting and Steve Waugh did.
You don't. So I mean, this is again going off topic a little bit, but you don't think any one of the 11 playing at the moment, for example, in this fifth test in Hobart, would get into, say, the 2006-7 Ashes team.
Do you think Steve Smith wouldn't get it?
I think so. I think they would. I don't think that.
I think.
I think there are players currently playing for Australia that will go down as, Bradman aside, obviously, because he's in his own criteria, will go down as amongst the greats, if not the greatest.
Yeah, certainly true.
Which, in that respect,
Prob-
then means that is it fair to say that this Australian side may not or is not indicative of being one of the greatest of all time? I mean, I don't know. It sounds like a ludicrous assumption.
Well, look, there's a difference between a side being great and individual players being great. The Indian batting order of the early 2000s was just ridiculously good. I mean, you look at Sehwag, Gambhir, Tendulkar, Dravid, Lakshman, Ganguly. Those are some of the best batsmen India's ever had. But when you look at that team, you're not going to say that's one of the greatest teams that ever played for India. But you are going to say that the current team that has toured all over the world and done quite well is one of the great Indian Test teams, and it's very similar to this Australian team. They have great individual players who are peaking at different times of their careers.
Yeah.
And this team is yet to tour Asia. They're yet to tour even say England and whitewash a series or win against England in the overwhelming manner that we were used to with the Aussies in the 90s and 2000s.
Yep. Fair enough. Now, I mean, I think this is as good a time as any to move on to that next section. As you said, you had a lot to talk about with regards to, or certainly something to talk about with regards to away batting performances, and I think collapses in particular is what you were interested in.
Yeah, that's right.
Highlighting. So let's take it away then. I mean, I think we've seen. I mean, just to set up all these sort of pull up your stats. We've seen England for the last month and a half. It's been evident, and both the Tests India have come off the back of batting collapses. I think Virat Kohli himself has rued the batting performances.
That's right.
And so that's I think
this yeah. So this entire thing started with that two innings that Virat played in the final Test match. The first one was slow by his standards, but the second one was slow by anyone's standards, even Pujara's standards.
Yeah.
We spoke about this when we were watching the innings. I think everyone would have noticed that Virat was just not having anything to do with anything that was outside the off stump. And Virat is a batsman who has all the shots in the book. He has a tendency to edge the ball that's sort of on fifth, sixth.
He has the desire to play all the shots in the book. He doesn't necessarily have the technique to do it in certain conditions. In the sense that maybe not. I don't want to. Maybe technique is the wrong phrase. I think. Sorry to interject. It's just that I think Virat suffers from what a lot of really, really top one-day batsmen who are also good Test cricketers, but in sort of periods suffer from, and it's just you dominate bowling in one-day cricket. You play with a certain arrogance. You can't afford to do that in Test cricket. Not initially, not when conditions are difficult to play in.
And Virat showed a tremendous amount of tenacity and application. And he showed that he's not necessarily always looking to dominate the bowling. He's happy for the bowlers to ride over him for a session or two. And that this is where the entire idea of batting collapses in away conditions came up, because you need someone like Rishabh Pant who play that tremendous innings in the third innings of that final India-South Africa Test match. You need someone like that in any given innings to carry your team, and you need someone on the other end to be an anchor. And ideally, you need 3 or 4 players to be doing that, building partnerships to give you a respectable total so that your bowlers can do a good job of defending that total.
Yep.
And we have seen now over and over again away teams touring the Southern Hemisphere, away teams touring SENA countries, which is South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia, perhaps even West Indies, just not able to muster together the batting that they need to be able to win test matches and test series. Um, and that's really the big takeaway here. It's going to be a big takeaway as well for the next section that we have. You look at the Ashes, the top run scorers, the top two, Travis Head and Maris Labuschagne. Third is Joe Root. You look at this India-South Africa series. And then an interesting sort of example again is the New Zealand-Bangladesh series. We haven't covered that in this episode because it got over a little bit earlier than this week.
With all due respect to, well, I was going to say with all due respect to Bangladesh, they're batting, but then it's the same could be said for England. In fact, Bangladesh has shown better batting in the Anzac region than England has for sure.
Exactly, and they did, and the reason they won that first Test match is because they scored 458 runs in the first innings, and then they were able to get away with it. Of course, you need those quality fast bowlers to be able to take all the 20 wickets you need to win the Test match, but you also need runs on the board. There's no getting away from that.
You have to give your bowlers something to work with, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's really where teams are coming up short, and we need to explore this further. How so? Ibadat Hussain, for example, is a good fast bowler for Bangladesh, and he's going to do well for them, and that's good. I mean, they have Ibadat, they have Shariful Islam. These are good fast bowlers, but what really won them that match was Waminul Haq. Shanto, well, to an extent, even Liton Das, with their great innings that got them the win.
Yeah,
and
I think.
And similarly, they lost the second Test match because of a batting collapse.
Yeah.
They couldn't score what New Zealand scored in the first innings. They couldn't do in 2 innings.
It sounds really obvious, right? It seems almost redundant to be making the point that teams that don't make more runs than the opposition are going to lose, but it's obviously not a coincidence. There's a reason why playing at home is meant to be a greater advantage. But it very much seems to be a case that in test matches abroad for team, given what's just happened with all three, with Bangladesh, England, and India, England more so than the others, obviously, is that on pitches which seem to be doing stuff for the bowler, one team is still able to grind those runs out. The ball was look at the fifth test in Hobart, for example. The ball was doing bits. That's why Australia were in trouble. They still managed to get to 303. England then reply with 188. That's not good enough. It's not. You can't just say, well, yes, you can say that they should have more runs. That's why they're losing the game. But it's deeper than that. It's that Australia managed to find a way to get to those 300 runs, whereas England didn't. And the same can be said for India. Same can be said for Bangladesh. Where the one time where India managed to get those runs in the first test off of a brilliant KL Rahul century, the pressure is on. And scoreboard pressure helps bowlers massively.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you can hear this. I think there's a jet flying overhead.
No.
Okay, well, it's going going faster than the English batting lineup lasts. That's for sure. It's about the only thing that does, though. Um, Azza, let's. I mean, I think we've had a decent discussion here and
Yeah.
there. We're not sticking to. We've written down commandments to stick to follow and to
Hmm.
attempt to be better podcasters. And I thought meme more was one of them. So I think we're failing on that. We need to set a meme quota. I don't know, like
A meme quota
a meme
per
quota
person. Meme
per
quota.
person per hour per minute.
Yeah.
Memes per
Yeah.
minute. Memes per hour. MPH. What's your MPH?
MPH. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
90 mph is that's usually a
That's
good
pretty
set.
high.
Ads, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm no Mark Wood, so maybe 90 is
Yeah.
a bit beyond. Um, so yeah, we well let's meme this then. We're called the Fantasy Cricket Podcast. We basically had zero fantasy discussion. So
So far.
let's buck that trend with section 4, which is gonna
Yeah.
just be an overall fantasy coverage. We don't have a name for it. Thankfully, you haven't managed to think of one for that.
Not yet.
We can maybe ask for suggestions in the comments if anybody's got suggestions. I fear we will have no name for the section then because nobody watches these videos.
Nobody watches them yet.
Unless your grandfather can type stuff out on YouTube comments, that would help.
I'll ask him.
Yeah,
I'll ask
that'd
him
be
to give
useful.
us some suggestions.
So fantasy cricket. We've done episodes in the past about the nuances between Test cricket and one-day cricket, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. I don't want to dive into that again. What I do want to say is, do you think you're going to be picking some of these players in the India South Africa one day series coming up from a fantasy point of view that have performed well in the Test series? Do you think, whilst maybe Rabada would have been a question mark, now you're thinking, well, you know what, he's ended really well, I'm going to consider picking him again?
KG looks in good rhythm. I might pick him. I might not, just because of his no ball situation. Boomer, on the other hand, I'll definitely pick.
He's got
He's
a no ball situation. He's maybe it'll be better with De Kock back.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
might
That'll help his yeah,
it'll help the no ball situation for sure.
for sure. Um, Look, the teams will be a little bit different. The squads are different.
I'm trying to find an up to date squad somewhere. So you go on. I mean, I
No,
believe KL Rahul is gonna be captaining.
KL is captain. I hope that frees up Virat to score big runs.
Yeah.
Um, that's about it, really. We're gonna probably see De Kock back as well.
Yeah, I mean, other than being uh, the greatest gift to cricket memory in the history of cricket, Quinton de Kock. He's actually a really important player for South Africa.
Yeah,
He's destructive, as I suppose certain ones are.
yeah,
He plays with he plays with a fluidity where he can really sort of. I've seen it with in the IPL, for example, where he can really carry his batting partner through as well. And I think some of Aiden Markram's best performances have also come playing with De Kock.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
it's it's gonna be interesting to see. I'm not sure if he's back though. Let me. I I have a feeling that he might still be on paternity leave or whatever it
Oh yeah,
is.
might be.
Um, what about Temba Bavuma? I'm a big fan of Temba
From
because
a
he's
fantasy point
basically
of
the same
view,
size as I am. So
true. Maybe he's put on a few more pounds than you, but yeah, lengthwise he might be the same size. Temba is he's a good player, but from a fantasy point of view, I don't think unless he's worth it in terms of the number of credits that he's going for, he's not the best buy.
yep,
The only reason I say that is because his boundary percentage is quite low compared to other players, even in his own side, but definitely if you look across both sides, you've got players who have a far higher boundary percentage, which for the same average, a player with a higher boundary percentage is going to give you more fantasy points.
fair enough.
So I'd be interested to pick someone like Aiden Markram more than Temba. From the Indian team standpoint, you can't go wrong with KL Rahul. I think his 1 day limited overs form in the past few years has just been ridiculous. So
Yep.
I'm looking at him from the bowling standpoint. I'm also looking at Jasprit Bumrah and Kagiso Rabada.
What about Shamsi?
Shamsi, number one ranked T20 bowler in the world at the moment.
Yeah. So
I think he's going to give the Indian batsmen a little less trouble than he gives some other teams. He's also a Chinaman, which means that he's going to be bringing it into most of the batsmen that he's bowling to, which makes him less of a threat. But I think if you have to pick a spinner, probably better to go with Ashwin if Ashwin's going to be bowling.
What about, sorry, I know I'm sort of moving back and forth. I'm just chucking names at you. One name I'm really excited about, mostly because he almost single-handedly rescued my IPL fantasy season, is Venkatesh Iyer. He's a really exciting prospect. I think he also seems to be really happy to embrace the big stage. Seems to have the character for it. So
he's got the confidence, yeah.
Yeah, so I think all eyes will be on the other Iyer, the now formerly of the Delhi Capitals, Shreyas Iyer.
Yeah.
But I think Venkatesh can sneak in.
Yeah, if he sneaks in, that'll be interesting to watch as well. I think they might try to do a bit of a rest and rotation policy for these ODIs.
Yeah, we know. We famously know with England that rest and rotation is a very successful policy that certainly works.
Yeah. Certainly was building up to the Ashes, and then that's what they were playing for.
No, it was evident in the in the fact that they did any percent speed run as to how quick they could lose the Ashes. So that's I suppose that's talent.
That's right.
Anything else on the fantasy front that we need to be aware of? I think really there could be something interesting where I think next week we can have a chat about the Legends cricket series or whatever that's happening in Oman. I'm going to try going to watch the games.
Give us a pitch report.
Give you a pitch report. See how that goes down, depending on the old Omicron situation. But I think we've covered a fair bit, Azza. I think.
I think it's been a good episode.
It's been an episode, that's for sure. We've got some interesting series coming up. I think in terms of there'll be a few tours of there's the 1 day series between South Africa and India, and then pretty quickly we're going to have England touring the West Indies for some limited over stuff. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to follow that, and I think on that note, Azza, I'm going to thank you very much, and
thank you, Nick.
Thank everybody.
Yes.
If anybody's even bothered getting this far, thank you for listening and staying tuned. And if you could give us any feedback, if you could give us any arms for the poor kind of thing, that's all welcome. But cheers, Azza. You have a good one.
Cheers, Nick. Thank you.
See you next week.